Hello, Doug here. Welcome back to yet another board game channel. Back after a little break for the holidays. Hope everybody had good ones. And yes, we will be starting yet another game playthrough, and as you can see, we're going to be giving Arkham Horror, the card game, a shot. It's the first living card game that I've ever bought. So we're going to see how it goes. As usual, I'm not going to do an in-depth tutorial or rules explanation to begin with. I'm just cover everything as it comes up. I have played through the first scenario available in the core set. Just quickly to get a handle on the rules and the game flow and everything. But now I'm going to start a proper campaign. As you can see, the campaign that it comes with, the Night of the Zealot. So yes, I'll be playing the first scenario again, but with a couple different characters, so it's new to me too. Alright, yeah, as I said, I will be doing the campaign. Keep in mind, this is a very story-heavy game, so, let's see, there's a lot of flavor text, and yeah. So be warned of spoilers. If you think you're ever going to play this, focus, there we go. Yourself, be warned, if you watch this through, you might be spoiled for a few things. However, I suspect it's still fun to replay, because different stuff is going to happen to you every time, because you're going to have different randomness. Anyway, yeah, so let's go over the setup a step at a time, and that will allow me to point out how things are going to go on the board, and yeah, let's just get into that. Alright, so if we look in the rules reference and go to the, there's an appendix for setting up the game in campaign mode, slightly different. First thing we'll do is choose our investigators. I've already chosen, so let's go over them. Going to be playing with Skids O'Toole, the ex-con. And just a moment. Right, you can see there he is, being all ex-conny. Here are his stats. You can see he's got 2 willpower, 3 intellect, 3 combat, and 4 agility. He'll probably be doing most of our fighting if fighting becomes a thing, and I'm sure it will. You can see he's got, yeah, keyword criminal. And his abilities, let's see, this is, that symbol means free trigger. That means you can do this without using an action. It's just something you can do. During Skids' turn, you can spend 2 resources. We'll see those soon, which will allow him to take an additional action on a turn, although he can only do it the one time. The Elder Sign effect, that will have to do with drawing tokens. Again, we'll see those in a bit. Means that whenever he draws that out of what's called the Chaos Bag, he'll get a +2 to his skill. And also, if he succeeds, because of that +2, he'll get 2 resources. Oh, he gets a nice little quote. I didn't get out of the joint just to watch the world end. And he's got 8 health and 6 sanity. And we'll look at his other side on a later step. Ah, yes, and they each come with a little indicator to show where they are, and also to indicate hasn't done anything and has done all his actions. And we're also going to pair him up with Daisy Walker, the librarian. I mostly wanted Daisy because librarians are cool. And one of the suggested partners for Daisy is Skids, so we're going with Skids. Now you can see she has 3 willpower, 5 intellect, so she'll be doing spells and stuff, most likely. 2 combat and 2 agility. Her keyword is Miskatonic, and her abilities are: you may take an additional action during your turn, which can only be used on tome abilities, and that little icon there means, well, an action trigger, they call it. Basically, doing something that has that on it would use one of your actions, but she gets to do it for free if that appears on a tome card. Her Elder Sign effect, she gets a +0 to her skill check, which is actually good because negatives can crop up a whole lot. And if she succeeds on that check, draw 1 card from her deck for each tome that she has in control. Her quote, "I know a book so powerful they can rewrite reality." And see, she has kind of got reverse stats. She's got lower health of 5 and sanity of 9. And there's her little placeholder card. Alright, the next step we're not actually going to do because it only matters in later modes. Take trauma damage and horror. That's a possible permanent effect later on in the campaign. Choose one of the investigators to be the lead for this game. I randomly chose because it doesn't much matter to me, so Skids is going to be the lead. Now, assemble and shuffle the investigator decks. There are a mess of cards with this, which is not surprising as it's a card game. And on the back of the character cards, it tells you how you can build the decks, what you're allowed to have and not have. You can see the deck size is going to be 30. Deck building options, what he is allowed to use. There are a bunch of classes in the game. In Skids' case, he can use rogue class cards from levels 0 through 5. He can also use guardian cards, but only levels 0 through 2. So his primary class is going to be rogue, but he can do a little bit of guardian stuff. And any neutral cards that have no class, he can have any of those between 0 and 5. He does have some requirements that don't count towards the 30. So on top of the 30, he has a couple of cards which will, I've already shuffled the decks and everything, so I'm not going to dig them out now, but we'll see them if they pop up. On the Lamb, hospital debts, and 1 random basic weakness. I did give him a random weakness. I don't know which one the character's got, so it's going to be a surprise for all of us when it turns up. Lucky us. And we've also got a bit of his backstory here. Skids hadn't planned on a life of crime. Sometimes doing the right thing means getting your hands dirty. The cops didn't care that Skids needed the money for his mother's operation. His mother died of her illness during the 2nd year of his sentence. His cellmate, Brad Hollins, told him there were worse fates than death. He ranted and raved in a quiet voice every evening about the old ones and told Skids about bizarre adventures he'd had while dreaming. Skids didn't give him much thought until the night he woke to the sight of his cellmate bursting into flames. When Skids was finally released, he returned to Arkham looking for answers. Now, Daisy's card requirements. You can see her deck size is also 30. She can use Seeker class cards from levels 1 through 5. Mystic cards, levels 0 through 2. Did I say 1? 0 through 5. 0 through 2. And the neutral cards, 0 through 5. Her deck building requirements, she's got her tote bag, the Necronomicon, which is actually a bad thing, and another random basic weakness. And her backstory: as a respected librarian at Miskatonic University, Daisy had always felt that books were about the most important thing in her life. She explored in fiction what she abhorred in life: horror, violence, fear. Then she stumbled across the John Dee translation of the Necronomicon. It was blasphemous, unholy, and too awful to be read. But given her studies in obscure and occult subjects, Daisy knew there was more truth than fiction within the book's pages. She began to wonder what other secrets the restricted collection of the Orne Library held. So yes, I've got each of their decks put together. I used the suggested deck that appears in the player's guide, suggested starting one. And I will just level those cards up as we go along. Now, next thing we do is assemble the token pool. Well, let's have a quick look at the different tokens. Here we have these which do double duty as both Clue and Doom tokens. These are resource tokens, already mentioned. They allow you to use the activate your cards. Unsurprisingly, the usual sanity, sorry about that, and health tokens. These will actually indicate damage. We'll put them on to the characters rather than take them off. And yeah, that's it for the tokens. Put those aside. Now, assembling the Chaos Bag, which in my case will actually be a Chaos Cup. Mug, rather. This is what you choose from when you are doing tests. You figure out the difference between the test and your ability, and then grab one of these at random and apply it to your skill, and either add or subtract, usually subtract. From it, there are a few special tokens. There's that Elder Sign that we spoke of. There's an automatic failure, and a few others with icons on them. That will vary from game to game. We will be doing, you can adjust which tokens are in the Chaos Bag bowl to adjust the difficulty of the game. We'll just be doing it on standard. We don't want it to necessarily be a cakewalk, but we'd also like to get through. Please. So yes, we'll be going with the standard. As you can see, there are still a fair number of negatives to go along with it all. You can see how nightmarish the expert is. -8. Ouch. Next up, I'm actually going to postpone 7 and 8 until we get to the end. That's where we basically set up our characters to get them ready to do things, which just makes more sense to me to do at the end. So we will be doing now the scenario introduction and following the scenario setup from the campaign guide. So let's just grab that. Okay, Night of the Zealot. There's an overall introduction. The Ghoul's Hunger. Friday, September 18th, 1925. Arkham, Massachusetts. It is the end of a long and abnormally hot summer. The first hints of autumn beckon, but a heavy heat persists, relentless. A silent, unspoken anger grips the town. Tempers are short, and in the last week there have been numerous reports of townspeople coming to heated, violent blows with one another over simple misunderstandings. And now, a call from James Hankerson. He claims to have found a dismembered body in his barn. Blaming the weather would be too easy. There's something wrong with this town, Not a whole lot this old soothsayer can do to stop the slide. My auguries indicate a small group of investigators will soon take note of these strange happenings and set forth to make things right. I'll be watching their progress, but I won't be holding my breath. That's the overall introduction. And we now get the introduction for this particular scenario, Part 1, The Gathering. You and your partners have been investigating strange events taking place in your home city of Arkham, Massachusetts. Over the past few weeks, several townspeople have mysteriously gone missing. Recently, their corpses turned up in the woods, savaged and half-eaten. The police and newspapers have stated that wild animals are responsible, but you believe there is something else going on. You are gathered together at the lead investigator's home to discuss these bizarre events. Now, to do a setup for the whole thing, first thing we needed to do was grab every card from the many cards in the box that had these icons on them. Notice if we, that for example, matches that. So that does a whole lot of, that just gives us what to construct our decks with. Okay, we're going to change positions on the table and start actually physically doing the setup. Alright, it says to put the study location into play and to set the other locations aside for now. So here is the study. When we first put it into play, it will be on the unrevealed side with the little keyhole there indicating that it's sort of locked. It does say, you've been investigating the strange events occurring in Arkham for several days now. Your desk is covered in newspaper articles, police reports, and witness accounts. So we will put that into play. Each investigator begins in the study. So we will take Skids and Daisy and just put them next to the study to indicate that they are there. Now, when your investigator goes into a location, you get to reveal it. So we'll just do that. And it says, the door to your study has vanished. Say what? Yep, no door. Now, another thing we do when we reveal the card is we put clues on it. That little icon means per investigator, so 2 clues per investigator, which means we put 4 clues on this location for us to gather and make some kind of progress towards figuring things out. Next, it says to set the Ghoul Priest and Lita Chandler cards aside out of play. There are a couple of other cards that we pulled because of the symbols that are on them. Right there. So, we're not going to do anything with these right now. We're going to put them aside with the locations. Then, all the other cards get shuffled and form the encounter deck. I already given them a shuffle, but there we go. So we'll just put this off to the side here for now. And now we set up what are called the agenda and act cards. The agenda cards is basically the game trying to get us to lose. The act cards is what we're trying to activate to proceed through and win. So we put up, there's a few of them, so we put the first one of each, side A. I'm just going to put those, I think they're out of shot, but we will move in a moment. And we read what the situation is. So as Agenda 1A says, what's going on? It is late at night. You are holed up in your study researching the bloody disappearances that have been taking place in the region. A few hours into your research, you hear the sound of strange chanting coming from your parlor down the hall. At the same time, you hear dirt churning as if something were digging beneath the floor. That doesn't look pleasant. Now, this 3 means that when there are 3 Doom tokens collected on this card, that'll happen once per turn, except the first turn, we flip it over and do what it says before moving on to card 2. On the other side, Act 1A points out that we are in fact trapped. As you leap to investigate, the door to your study vanishes before your eyes, leaving behind only solid wall. You're trapped inside your study until you can find another way out. Now, to activate this card and move on, our investigators need to collect a total of 4 clues, 2 per investigator. So we have to get all the clues out of the study, basically, to figure out what the heck to do next. There's no timing indicated on the clue icon, which I'm pretty sure means that just the moment you have enough, you can flip the card over and then proceed. Okay, just give me a second to readjust here. Right, next up in the set of instructions, yes, we set up according to the campaign guide. We set up the agenda and act decks. Now, place the scenario reference card next to the agenda deck. That little card, double-sided card, tells us what all these little tokens do from the Chaos bag. There are 2 sides. There's a side for if you're playing on easy or standard, and the side if you're playing on hard or expert. We're doing standard, so it'll be this side up. It'll just be there as a reminder. When we pick a skull, it will be a negative X to our skill. X being the number of ghoul enemies at your location. So in the specific room you're in. The cultist is a -1, which is, yeah, okay, fine. However, if you fail, you take a horror. It doesn't normally happen when you fail. And finally, this little broken tablet, whatever it is, counts for a -2 to your skill. And if there's a ghoul enemy at your location, you take a damage on top of it. So I just put that up there to remind ourselves what those do. Now, I'm going to go back to those steps that I skipped and do the final setup of our heroes so we can start planning what they're going to do. Okay, starting with Skids, as he's our lead. Here he is next to his deck. You start off each scenario by grabbing 5 resource tokens with which to spend on activating these cards. And you take 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's have a quick look and see what Skid's opening hand is. Now, if we pick up one of his weaknesses, he'll have 2 weaknesses in there. The set one that he always has and the random one. If we get those during this first draw, we put them aside, keep choosing until we're at 5, and then shuffle those back in. You don't get a weakness right away, thankfully. Alright, so we can see what he is going to start with. He's going to start with a guard dog, which is going to cost 3 to play. He can use it, you can just discard the card rather than use it as a guard dog to increase his combat. They'll all have little icons like that to improve skill checks. You can see it's an ally creature, and it has a reaction. It's something that just happens when something else happens. When an enemy attack deals damage to the guard dog, he deals 1 damage to the attacking enemy. Fiercely loyal, these trained canines make for perfect companions. He's also got 3 health and 1 sanity. We can actually use an ally like this, you can see that little icon there, to soak up damage if we think we need it. Unfortunately, it means losing the ally if you do too much damage to it. You can only have 1 ally active at a time. That's important. I also got a flashlight, 2 to put into play. Item tool, when you do put it into play, we'll put 3 resource tokens on it to track that it can be used 3 times. Then as an action, spend 1 of the supplies, and you get to investigate, getting a -2 shroud for this investigation. That'll make it easier to search for clues. We'll see that in action when we start to play next episode. Physical training, 2 to put into action. It's a talent, and as a free action, you can spend a resource to get either +1 intelligence. I keep forgetting what these new ones are called. Just a moment. Willpower. Willpower. To get either +1 willpower or +1 combat. To a check. He also has an event which costs 5 resources to do, but it's a dynamite blast. Tactic. Choose either your location or a connecting location. Deal 3 damage to each enemy and to each investigator in the chosen location. We can do a lot of hurt with that. Also, finally, burglary. Only takes 1 to put into play. Talent illicit. Well, it is skids. As an action, you can exhaust burglary. Basically, tap it. Yes, I know, copyrighted by Wizards of the Coast. I'm going to say tap anyway. So exhaust burglary to investigate. You investigate as per normal, but if you succeed, you can instead get 3 resources instead of 1 of the clues. So that's his starting hand. Now let's see what Daisy's going to get. Okay, there's Daisy. There's her 5 resources. And 1, 2, 3, 5 cards. She also has a flashlight. We just saw Skids' equivalent. It's exactly the same. Oh, I forgot about that. This means it takes up 1 hand. Obviously, you only have 2 hands, so you can only have 2 hands worth of items active at one time. She's also got an ally, the Arcane Initiate. Forced. Forced means that whenever the card goes into play, this has to happen. After this card enters play, place 1 Doom on it. And as a free action, you can exhaust her. Search the top 3 cards of your deck for a spell card and draw it, then shuffle your deck. And she can soak up 1 health and 2 sanity damage. Right, the emergency cache, which doesn't cost any resources, but will still count as one of you get 3 actions per turn, still count as an action. Supply, basically you get 3 resources for free. You can never be too prepared, indeed. She also has available her Hyper Awareness, which will cost 2 to play. It's a talent, similar to the one Skids had. Can't remember what it was called. But yeah, she can get +1 by spending a resource on her intellect or her agility. She's also got manual dexterity. This doesn't cost anything to play, as it's a skill. Basically, you will play this to use to get the ability. This will get you 2 extra ability. But if you use this card to do that, and you can only use 1 of them, you will actually get a card if you succeed. Normally, you just get a clue, but you get a clue and a card. Too easy, as they say. And back to the flashlight. So, that is it for the setup. Is that lengthy enough? Hope that wasn't too much of an info dump for people. Yeah, we will next time be moving into actual gameplay. It'll be much more interesting than me yammering on about what all the stuff is. You'll get to see it in action. If anything was unclear, it'll become clear. So, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for liking and subscribing and commenting. It's muchly appreciated. And we will see you next time for yet another turn. Well, the first turn. Yet another episode. That makes more sense. Of Arkham Horror, the card game. See you then.